Dudes, we have something for all the pores out there that can't quite be baller enough for a 370Z. It's the return of the, oh wait, no way, you're kidding. He didn't just say what I think he did he? AKA the Gktech Fresh and Updated version 2 Z33 350z G35 and V35 Super Lock front lower control arms. Yes, that's right, our control arms part due are superior in every single way to the V1 because our engineers engineered them to be that way. Which means, not only are these made from the same burly 4130 Chromoly Steel as before, but we now introduce the goddamn on-car adjustment. That's right, we listened to you, the people, and made the changes. These of course allow the use of the stock knucks and pair amazingly well with our bolt-on angle kit. So let's go over everything you get. Starting with the smaller arms, you get some bolts. These particular ones secure the cone to the knuckle as you will be deleting the OEM two-piece front arms. It doesn't make sense now, but it will in a few. Moving right along, another bolt. This time being the damper mount bolt. Its purpose in life is to mount the damper. Good job at guessing that, you rockstar you. Next are the top and bottom inserts for that weird stud thing coming out of the bottom of the chassis. Then you have the link pin spacers. That's the sway bar end link for those not from down under. And these are to make sure the end link runs on the correct plane, but a bit more on that later. Moving on to the damper bearing inserts, which again is not a tricky title. Next are the front lower control arm inserts that live inside the bearings, providing a loving sleeve for the bolts that attach it to the subframe. Then you have the lock stop bolt, with the ultra complicated system of stacking washers to get it where you like, then tightening it down. Sometimes less is more, compadres. You also have the optional dust boots, which you don't need to use as our bearings are PTFE line, but we provide them for people who live in an ocean, a rainforest, or London. Now, new to the V2 Z33 kit are these, which in John's words are mucho importante. Read that in an Aussie Spanish accent and get back to me later.
Mucho importante.
And that being the pinch bracket adjuster. This little bundle of love attaches to the back side of the control arm and has been engineered to both lock internally and externally, making damn well sure that it stays in place. Again, we'll show you how all this works when we bolt it all up. And finally, we get to the meat and potatoes, the biscuits and gravy, the nitty gritty if you will, the one FLCA to rule all other FLCAs, the FLCA itself. As mentioned, this wobbly H offers on-car adjustment, link pin adjustment, as well as spherical bearings throughout, allowing it to move in all of its effortless glory and or freedom. You also get the bonus and signature love letter that we provide with most of our kits that include an assembly guide and stickers, because who doesn't love stickers? Also, if you don't like watching videos or my voice or anything that I say, just look at the guide and let that guide be your guide. Now that I'm 7 paragraphs deep already into what you get, let's start putting the damn thing together. Starting with our little adjuster of love, remove the nuts, bolts, and washers, as you need to do this anyway to put it on the end of the arm, which, plot twist, is exactly where it needs to go. Toss the nuts, bolts, and washers back on as shown, leaving it all hand tight for now. Now, as stated before, we have designed this unit to lock two ways, in and out. So let's peep the inner mechanism, shall we? You don't need to do this, this is just for demo purposes. Let's remove the extender from the arm, and then we'll remove the rose joint from the extender itself. Once it's bare, naked, and alone, we can insert the right-sized Allen key deep within and remove the proprietary engineered new independent system hex-assist-driven locking engagement, or PENIS HANDLE for short. This little guy locks the rose joint into the sleeve. Amazing, right? The 370 guys already know how sick these are, but they look down on you anyway and never bring it up in conversation. Here we are putting everything back together and leaving it loose to adjust later. After 3 years of talking, we finally get to the install. Well, kind of. Let's start by talking about the max and minimum safe adjustments. We always like to start at the max safe adjustment and wind down from there, which in this case is 58 millimeters from the edge of the bracket to the center of the heim. That is broken down by 14.5 millimeters from the edge of the bracket to the end of the extender and 43.5 millimeters from the edge of the extender to the middle of the heim. In our case, we're slamming this guy inwards to the minimum safe adjustment via the use of our proprietary adjustment system. getting that sucker down to 28 millimeters from the edge of the bracket to the center of the heim. Now, in the immortal words of Missy Elliott, putting that thing down, flipping it, and reversing it, max is 94 millimeters from the edge of the arm to the center of the heim, made up of 25.5 millimeters from the edge of the arm to the edge of the adjuster, and 68.5 millimeters from the edge of the adjuster to the center of the heim. Bringing things back in like we do here at Gktech, you're set with 64 millimeters from the edge of the arm to the center of the rose joint, made up of basically the adjustment nut's worth of length. Now that we're at the minimum length, aka what you've been told you're at your whole life, let's get this thing on the car. Start by removing the ultra extra super annoying under brace, which probably does make the car stiffer but sucks to remove. So boot up your Octo Zac and have him Octo Zap all those bolts off and get that thing out of the way. Move over and remove the split pin from the compression arm, then the nut itself, zapping that off and keeping it at a safe place for now. Now you're free to remove the compression arm in its entirety. Yay. Next, remove the lower link pin nut and washer and remove the link pin itself. Then remove the split pin from the lower ball joint, followed by a loosen and removal of the nut holding the lower ball joint down. Once the nut is off, the knuckle should break free from its bonds, allowing you to easily remove the coilover nut and bolt. Pop that off, then move to the inside and loosen and remove that nut and bolt as well, where thusly the lower control arm itself can now be emancipated from its current location. Now, tossing both of these on a bench, we can compare sizes. Did I say sizes? I meant to compare LCAs. The two-piece spaghetti system used by the OEM makes the car feel squirmy and adds to the issues of it falling to lock and getting stuck when any angle adders are installed, as the OEM system is a double ball jointed front end, as compared to our fully adjustable one-piece designed Batmobile of LCAs that will keep everything where you want it and help you with that pesky falling to lock issue the OEM so kindly provided. Now that we've stroked the ego poetic, you need to rob one thing from the OEM compression arm, that being the cone that resides on the ball joint. Some are easy to get off, others are absolute terrors. Take that tiny volcano and head back over to your whip, pop it upside down into the top side of the knuckle. Now grab your fully sick and assembled LCA and muscle that thing up into the right place, all whilst sliding the long insert up into that stud that I mentioned earlier. Slide the rose joint on with the other small insert on the bottom, then thread the nut to keep it all in one place. Don't go all Rambo and torque that thing down to its spec, just leave it hand tight for now, as we just need it there as a placeholder. Now head to the front of the arm, pop the bolt through the guts, and wind the nut onto the backside, leaving it loose for now. Lift the arm up and over the ball joint, then drop it down onto the cone. Grab the ball joint nut and wind that down once again, just hand tight for now. The link pin needs to be installed from the bottom to the top, as if you try to do it the other way, you will curse me for not telling you to do so. So there, now I've told you so tell your friends I told you to tell them. Remove the link pin from the sway bar as shown here. I also mentioned I'd explain the spacers for the link pin, so now's a decent time to do that. Put the spacer in before the LCA, and then pop the nut and washer on the other side. Pop the link pin back through the hole of choice, and I'll explain those now. The closest point for the end link to mate is the furthest hole inward, so insert in that hole for the OEM-like feel. The more you go outward, the stiffer it will be. Too easy. Pop the other side of the end link into the sway bar itself and toss the nut back on, leaving it hand tight for now. Now head on over to the damper bearing and slip those inserts in ever so lovingly, then pop the coilover bracket down and shoot your shot through the guts once again, but not all the way, as this is a tight fit. You do just need to have a few threads showing to get the nut engaged whilst you hold it up there. Now head over to that upside down but happy volcano we tossed in earlier and put the bolt and washer through from the top to the bottom and the nut down below, completing the volcano sandwich. And ladies and gentlemen of all ages, we proudly present to you the Torquing Rampage that has been bubbling up this whole video. Let's start with the happy upside down volcano sandwich. Toss a spanner up top and torque the bottom nut down to the specs shown on the screen. Then head slightly up to the ball joint nut and torque that big boy down to these specs shown as well. Then head inwards to the bolt that secures the LCA to the subframe, and you guessed it, toss a wrench on one side and torque down to the specs shown right here on the screen. Now pop over to the damper bolt and tighten and torque that to the specs shown here as well. Swing on over to the lower link pin nut and torque to these specs, heaving that torquer upwards and torque down the top to these specs as well. Welcome to the Torque Rampage intermission.
Welcome to intermission.
Take that nut we ever so lightly had supporting the LCA and untorque that to the specs of being all the way off the car. Grab your ever so friendly but unsightly friend, the underbrace, and heave it up into place and wind and tighten down all the nuts to the 8 billion different various spots it's attached to. Remember to leave the inserts on the Steady Boys from earlier. Then zapparoo all those guys down and grab that handy torque wrench, because of course it's time to continue the Torque Rampage, tightening every single one of those to the torque specs shown right here on the screen in front of your very eyeballs. Now that everything is bolted and torqued, I can see that giant question mark hanging out above your head. You're currently asking yourself, hey dude with the buttery smooth, silky how-to vocals, you mentioned on-car adjustment, what gives? Well, non-silky voice guy, I got you. To start, you'll need to leave the 2 pinch bolts loose during this process. This is important, do not skip this. This allows the pinch bolt adjuster to pivot on the arm itself. Let's start with the rear adjuster. Using the correct size Allen, if the arm pivots towards the front of the car, the extender is moving outwards. You're giving positive, aka more caster, and if you shoot it towards the rear of the car, it's negative or less caster. Once you're done messing around with our awesome on-car adjustments, if you're searching for OEM caster, just make sure the adjuster is running parallel with the arm as shown in this handy-dandy tech diagram, which just so happens to be where we're leaving it for our setup. The next step is important, aka the internal jam nut is tightened against the heim correctly. Remember, you want to go counterclockwise. Yes, that means righty-loosey, lefty-tighty. Get that thing nice and snug, and don't forget that part. I cannot stress that enough. Now that the heim is one piece with the adjuster, and before tightening the pinch bolts on down, you need to twist it to make sure that it's not cocked to the left or right, but running central. You're now free to tighten on down the pinch bolts by tossing a spanner up top and zapping the nut on the bottom down, then torquing to the specs shown on the screen. And now, like James Brown, get on up to the front rose joint. And since we've already set the length and are happy with it as well, we've confirmed that the bearing is also running centrally. Go ahead and tighten down the 2 locking nuts on the heim. You are now locked, cocked, and ready to go flying off the track like you always do. Don't forget to adjust the lock stops. Swing them wheels side to side to figure out where your rack maxes out and set the lock stop to just before that happens. Use the provided washers for that custom dialed perfection fit. This is 100% critical, Mr. Cut Your Lock Stops Off and try to be like Backy Zach. If you don't set your lock stops, you're gonna have a bad day, and by bad day, I mean over-centering. Then, once you're set, tighten that sucker down to the specs on the screen, kick back, pop open a cold one, admire your handiwork as you've earned it. You've now entered the big boy world of more lock and more adjustments to argue about on the internet, as well as pure Sex Panther on the front of your car. Speaking of Sex Panther, this is Gktech. Well, the part of Gktech that makes these vids happen anyway, aka Nappy Zach and whatever S chassis is stylish enough for him to consider in the bottom left, then Johnny Caps in his V8 S14 that does cheeky burnouts, then me, myself, and I flossing my Gktech lug nut sponsored IS300. If you can't install these, have a pro watch this video, then pay them to do it for you. If you have any questions, email us at sales@gktech.com. This has been Officer Dan, OctoZac 3.2, and Johnny Caps with another GKTech How To. Peace. Set the damn lock stops.